The coins made a sound like rain on a tin roof. They spilled across the checkout counter in a cascade of copper and silver, rolling and spinning and settling into the grooves between the conveyor belt and the scanner, some of them falling onto the floor with sharp little clinks that echoed through the sudden mortifying silence of Register 7 at Harrison's Family Market on a Tuesday afternoon in March. The old man's hands were shaking. That was the first thing everyone noticed. Not the coins, the hands. They trembled with the particular involuntary vibration of age, the kind of trembling that has nothing to do with nerves or cold or fear, and everything to do with the slow, irreversible deterioration of the nervous system that happens to every human body that is fortunate enough to survive long enough to experience it. His name was Walter Eugene Prescott. He was 79 years old. He was wearing a coat that was too thin for March in Minnesota, a gray wool thing with patches on the elbows and buttons that didn't match because the originals had fallen off years ago and been replaced with whatever he could find in the sewing basket his wife had left behind. His shoes were polished. That was the detail that nobody noticed because nobody looked at his feet. But if they had, they would have seen that despite everything else, despite the coat and the trembling and the coins, his shoes were polished, shined to a mirror finish, the shoes of a man who still cared about something, even if the world he cared about had shrunk to the size of a grocery store checkout line. He had placed 4 items on the conveyor belt: a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, a tin of soup, and a small bag of hard candies, the butterscotch kind, individually wrapped in gold cellophane, the kind that grandparents keep in a bowl on the coffee table for when the grandchildren visit. The total was $11.43. Walter reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small cloth bag. It was a Crown Royal bag, the purple velvet kind that comes with the whiskey and that people repurpose for everything from marbles to coins to the small, precious objects that need a soft place to live. He opened the drawstring and tilted the bag over the counter. The coins poured out: quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies, a small avalanche of American currency in its lowest, most humble denominations, the money that accumulates in jars and drawers and between couch cushions, the money that people step over on sidewalks, the money that vending machines reject, the money that to most people isn't really money at all. It's weight. It's nuisance. It's the stuff you throw in a dish by the door and forget about. To Walter, it was a week's groceries. The cashier's name was Brittany. She was 19 years old. She had been working at Harrison's for 6 months, and she had developed in that time the particular brand of boredom that retail work produces in young people who feel they are meant for something better, but who haven't yet figured out what the something is. She had blue-painted nails and a phone in her back pocket that she checked every 4 minutes, and the expression of someone who was physically present, but mentally elsewhere. She looked at the coins on the counter. She looked at Walter. She looked at the coins again, and she laughed. Not a big laugh, not a cruel laugh, exactly, more of an exhale, a snort. The involuntary sound that escapes when you encounter something that is so far outside the normal rhythm of your day that your body responds before your brain can catch up. It was the laugh of surprise, of disbelief, of the automatic, unthinking reaction that young people have when old people do things that seem absurd. But it landed like a slap. "Sir, I can't count all this," Brittany said. "Do you have a card or bills?" Walter looked at her. His eyes were pale blue, the color that blue eyes become when the pigment fades with age, like denim that's been washed too many times. They were watery, not from tears, from the perpetual moisture that old eyes produce, the biological equivalent of a leaky faucet, one more system failing quietly in a body that was held together by habit and will. "This is what I have," he said. His voice was quiet, steady, the voice of a man who is embarrassed, but who has decided not to let the embarrassment change what he needs to do. The woman behind him in line sighed. It was a loud sigh, the kind of sigh that is designed to be heard, the kind that says, without words, "I am inconvenienced, and I want everyone to know it." Her name was Karen Whitfield. She was 46. She was holding a basket of organic produce and almond milk and the specific assortment of expensive, health-conscious groceries that a certain kind of suburban woman buys to signal that she takes her body seriously. She was wearing yoga pants and a down vest, and the expression of someone who has been waiting in line for approximately 90 seconds, and who considers this a violation of her fundamental rights. "Oh my God," Karen said, not to Walter, to the air, to the line, to the audience she imagined was as frustrated as she was. "Is this seriously happening right now?" A man behind Karen laughed. The couple behind him exchanged looks. A teenager 3 spots back took out his phone and started recording because he was 17, and that's what 17-year-olds do when something interesting happens in a boring place. They record it. Walter stood at the counter with his trembling hands and his purple velvet bag and his $11.43 in coins, and he felt the weight of every eye in the line pressing against his back, like hands pushing him toward a door he didn't want to walk through. He started to gather the coins. Slowly, carefully, picking them up one by one with fingers that wouldn't cooperate, that closed too slowly and gripped too weakly. And that turned every penny into an engineering challenge and every quarter into a small victory. "Sir, please," Brittany said. "There are other customers waiting." "I'm sorry," Walter said. "I'll go. I'm sorry for the trouble." He said it the way old people say it when they apologize for existing. The way they say it in grocery stores and doctors' offices and bus seats and all the other places where the world's impatience with their slowness becomes palpable. "I'm sorry for the trouble," as if being 79 years old and buying bread with coins were a crime against efficiency, as if the inconvenience of counting pennies outweighed the dignity of a man feeding himself. He was putting the coins back in the bag. His hands were shaking worse now. The embarrassment had accelerated the trembling, the way adrenaline accelerates everything, and the coins kept slipping from his fingers and falling on the counter and the floor, and the sound they made was the sound of a man being undone in public, 1 penny at a time. Karen sighed again. "Can someone open another register? Some of us have places to be." The teenager kept recording, and then a voice came from behind the customer service counter, a voice that was sharp and clear, and carried the specific authority of someone who is about to change the direction of a situation that has gone very wrong. "Brittany, stop what you're doing, right now." The voice belonged to a man named Derek Torres. He was 32 years old. He was the assistant manager of Harrison's Family Market. He had been watching from the customer service counter 20 feet away, and he had seen everything. The coins, the laugh, the sigh, the phone recording, the old man apologizing for existing. Derek walked to register 7. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with a shaved head and tattoos on both forearms and the particular kind of physical presence that makes people pay attention when he enters a room. He had been working at Harrison's for 11 years, since he was 21. Since he dropped out of community college because his mother got sick and someone needed to pay the bills. He had worked his way up from stock boy to cashier to shift supervisor to assistant manager with the steady, unspectacular competence of a man who shows up every day and does the work and doesn't complain. He walked to the counter. He looked at the coins. He looked at Walter. He looked at Brittany, who had stopped laughing and who was now wearing the expression of a 19-year-old who has just realized that the assistant manager is standing behind her and that the sound she made 30 seconds ago might have consequences. He looked at Karen, who was mid-sigh and who stopped mid-sigh when she saw the look on Derek's face, which was not angry exactly, but which contained a temperature that made anger seem temperate by comparison. "Sir," Derek said to Walter, "please don't put those coins away. We're going to count them right here." "I'll do it myself." Walter looked at him. The pale blue eyes, watery and uncertain, searched Derek's face for the thing they had been searching for in Brittany's face and in Karen's face and in the faces of every person in that line. Respect. Basic, human, uncomplicated respect. The acknowledgement that a man paying for groceries with coins is not a joke or an inconvenience or a spectacle. He is a customer. He is a human being. He is someone who got dressed this morning and polished his shoes and walked to the store because he needed bread and milk and soup. And the fact that he is paying with coins instead of a credit card does not make him less worthy of service. Derek found a plastic tray from behind the counter. He placed it on the counter beside the register. He looked at Walter. "Go ahead and pour them out, sir. Take your time." Walter poured the coins into the tray. Derek sorted them, quarters in one stack, dimes in another, nickels, pennies. He counted them with the focused, methodical precision of a man who has been working with money for 11 years and who can count a register in 4 minutes flat. He counted while the line watched. He counted while Karen shifted her weight from one yoga-panted leg to the other. He counted while the teenager continued to record. He counted while Brittany stood beside him silently with the particular stillness of a young person who is beginning to understand something about the world that she didn't understand 5 minutes ago. The count took 4 minutes and 12 seconds. $12.07, Derek said. You're 64 cents over. You want your change? Walter nodded. Derek made the change. He bagged the groceries, the bread, the milk, the soup, the butterscotch candies. He placed each item in the bag with care, the way you bag groceries for someone you respect, which is to say, not roughly, not carelessly, not with the speed over quality approach that characterizes most grocery bagging, but deliberately, attentively, as if the bread and milk and soup and candies were important, because they were. He handed the bag to Walter. Thank you for shopping with us, Mr. Prescott. Walter's eyes widened slightly. You know my name. Yes, sir. You've been shopping here every Tuesday for as long as I can remember. Bread, milk, soup, butterscotch candies. Same order, same time. You used to come with your wife. Walter's face changed. The embarrassment receded. Something else took its place. Something warmer. Something that looked like being recognized, being known, being seen not as a problem or a spectacle or a line-blocking inconvenience, but as a person with a history and a routine and a name. Vivian, Walter said. Her name was Vivian. I remember. She always bought the oatmeal cookies, the soft ones. She loved those cookies. She'd eat half the package on the drive home and pretend she hadn't. I'd find the wrappers in the glove compartment. Derek smiled. I remember her walking through the aisles. She always stopped to smell the flowers in the floral section. Every time, even if she wasn't buying any. She said you could tell how good a store was by its flowers. If the flowers were fresh, the store cared. If they were wilting, the store had given up. Walter paused. She was right about most things. I remember the two of you at the register. You always let her go first. You'd stand behind her and carry the bags. 53 years. I carried her bags. Never once complained, never once wanted to stop. Walter's chin trembled, the emotional kind. Derek saw it, and he felt something crack in his own chest, because this man was not just a customer, he was a love story. A walking, trembling, coin-paying love story that had been coming to this store every Tuesday for 3 years, performing the ritual of a marriage that had ended, but that he refused to let die. She passed 3 years ago, Walter said. I know, sir, I'm sorry, she was a lovely woman. She was the best person I ever knew. She was. Smarter than me, kinder than me, and a better judge of character than me. If she were here right now, she would have told that girl at the register to count the coins and smile while doing it. And the girl would have done it, because Vivian had that effect on people. She made you want to be better. Derek nodded. He understood, not from experience, but from observation. 11 years of working in a grocery store, watching couples come and go, watching the ones who loved each other and the ones who tolerated each other and the ones who had stopped trying. He could always tell. Love shows up in grocery stores, in the way someone reaches for a product and says, no, get the one she likes, in the way someone holds the door, in the way someone puts their hand on the small of their partner's back while they wait in line. Love is not grand gestures. Love is grocery store gestures. Small, routine, invisible to everyone except the person they're aimed at. Walter took the bag. He held it against his chest. He held it against his chest the way he might have held something precious, something that represented not just groceries, but the small, affirming experience of being treated like a human being by another human being in a fluorescent-lit grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon in March. He walked toward the door. Then Derek turned to the line, to Karen, to the teenager with the phone, to Brittany, to every person who had watched a 79-year-old man apologize for paying with coins and who had responded with laughter and sighs and recordings instead of patience and kindness and the basic human decency that should not require a job title to enforce. I need everyone in this line to hear something, Derek said. His voice was not loud. It didn't need to be. The quiet that had fallen over Register 7 was complete, the kind of quiet that happens when a room senses that something important is about to be said. That man has been shopping here every Tuesday since before I started working here. 11 years. He comes at the same time. He buys the same things. He used to come with his wife. She died 3 years ago. Now he comes alone. He paused. He pays with coins because he lives on Social Security. $847 a month. That's what this country gives a 79-year-old man who worked for 50 years and paid his taxes and raised his children and buried his wife. $847. After rent and utilities and medication, what's left goes in a Crown Royal bag, and it comes here to this store every Tuesday for bread and milk and soup and butterscotch candies. He looked at Karen. The candies are for his grandchildren. They visit on Saturdays. He keeps them in a bowl on the coffee table, the same bowl his wife used to keep them in, because he wants his grandchildren to remember that when they came to Grandpa's house, there were always butterscotch candies, even when Grandpa had to pay for them in pennies. Karen's face had changed. The impatience was gone. In its place was something that looked like it might be shame, though Karen was not a woman who was accustomed to feeling shame and who might not have recognized it immediately. Derek looked at the teenager with the phone. Put that away. That man is not content. He is not a video. He is not something you post to get likes from people who will watch it for 12 seconds and feel nothing and scroll to the next thing. He is a person, and what just happened to him is not entertainment. The teenager put the phone away. He didn't argue. He didn't protest. He put it away with the quick, automatic compliance of a young person who has been addressed by an adult with moral authority, which is the only kind of authority that teenagers actually respect. Derek looked at Brittany. You and I are going to talk in the office after your shift. Brittany nodded. Her eyes were red. She was 19 years old, and she was beginning to understand something that would take years to fully comprehend, that the small sounds we make, the laughs and the sighs and the under-the-breath comments are not small at all, that they land on people, that they accumulate, that a snort at a checkout counter can be the thing that makes a 79-year-old man go home and sit in his kitchen and decide that the world has no more room for him. Derek went to the office. He sat at the desk. He opened the store's computer. He pulled up the customer loyalty database and typed in Prescott. The account was there. Walter E. Prescott, member since 1987, 37 years. 37 years of Tuesday shopping trips, 37 years of bread and milk and soup, and starting in 2004, when the first grandchild was born, butterscotch candies. But that wasn't what made Derek stop breathing. It was the founding member tag on the account, a small digital badge that appeared next to the name of customers who had been in the loyalty program since its inception. Derek clicked on the badge. A note appeared, a note that had been entered into the system in 1987 by someone who no longer worked at the store and who had left behind a single sentence of context. Founding family, original owner. Derek stared at the screen. He stared at the two words that changed everything. Original owner. He got up from the desk. He walked to the break room where the wall of photographs hung. The wall that every Harrison's Family Market had, in every location showing the history of the company, the founders, the milestones, the first store, the expansion, the family that had built a regional grocery chain from a single storefront in 1962. He found the photograph he was looking for, black and white, a man standing in front of a small grocery store with a hand-painted sign that said Prescott's Market. The man was young, 30 maybe, dark hair, strong jaw, wearing an apron and a smile that radiated the particular kind of pride that comes from standing in front of something you built with your own hands. The man was Walter Eugene Prescott, the man who had just been laughed at for paying with coins at Register 7, the man who had apologized for existing, the man who had been recording by a teenager and sighed at by a woman in yoga pants and dismissed by a 19-year-old cashier. That man had built this store, not this specific location, the original, the first Prescott's Market, which opened in 1962 on Main Street in downtown Cedar Rapids, a small grocery store that Walter and Vivian had started with their savings and a loan from Vivian's father, and the kind of optimism that only young people in the early 1960s could sustain, the belief that hard work and good service would be enough. It had been enough for a long time. Prescott's Market grew. Walter opened a second location in 1971, a third in 1978. By the mid-1980s, there were 7 Prescott's Markets across Iowa and Minnesota, all of them run with the same philosophy that Walter had established on day one. Treat every customer like a neighbor. Know their names. Know their families. Know what they buy and why they buy it and what it means to them. Then the chains came. The Walmarts and the Targets and the Costcos, the massive, efficient, impersonal machines that could undercut a regional grocery chain on every price and every product. And that offered the one thing that Walter's stores couldn't compete with: cheapness. Not just cheap prices, cheap in every sense. Cheap products, cheap service, cheap relationships. The systematic reduction of the grocery shopping experience from a human interaction to a transaction, from a conversation to a barcode scan, from a relationship to a receipt. Walter saw it happening the way a farmer sees a drought approaching, slowly, inexorably, with the helpless understanding that you can prepare and you can adapt, but you cannot stop the weather. The first sign was the numbers. Foot traffic dropped. Revenue dropped. The loyal customers kept coming, but there weren't enough of them to sustain 7 stores against the tidal wave of chain competition. The second sign was the employees. The good ones started leaving. They could make more money at Walmart, better benefits at Target, more hours at Costco. Walter couldn't match the corporate offers. He was a 7-store regional chain competing against companies with 10,000 stores and economies of scale that made his purchasing power look like a child's lemonade stand. The third sign was the hardest to watch. The customers changed. Not all of them, but enough. People who had shopped at Prescott's for decades started splitting their trips, buying the basics at Walmart, where the prices were lower, and coming to Prescott's only for the things the chains didn't carry: the specialty items, the local products, the fresh-baked bread. They still liked Prescott's. They still preferred Prescott's. But liking and preferring don't pay the bills when the competitor across town is selling the same milk for $1 less. Walter fought. He fought for 15 years. He cut costs. He renegotiated with suppliers. He worked 18-hour days. He mortgaged the house. He borrowed from friends. He took a pay cut, then another, until he was making less than his cashiers and working twice the hours. He did everything a small business owner can do when the tide is turning against him, and it wasn't enough. The stores closed one by one over the course of a decade. Each closing was a funeral. Each time Walter stood in the empty store after the last customer left and the last employee went home, and he turned off the lights one section at a time, and he locked the door for the last time, and he walked to his car and sat in the parking lot and stared at the building that had been alive that morning and that was dead now. The last one to close was the original, the Main Street location, the store he and Vivian had. Opened in 1962, the store where he had installed the butterscotch candy bowl and the wide aisles and the produce section up front. The store where he had known every customer by name and where every child who walked through the door left with something sweet. He closed it on a Saturday night in December 1997, the week before Christmas. He had tried to make it through the holidays. One last Christmas in the store. One last season of families coming in for their turkeys and their hams and their holiday supplies. But the creditors couldn't wait. The bank couldn't wait. The math, which had been unfavorable for years, had become impossible. Vivian stood with him that last night. They turned off the lights together. They locked the door together. They stood on the sidewalk on Main Street and looked at the dark storefront with the Prescott's Market sign that would be taken down on Monday and replaced with nothing. And they held each other in the cold December air. "We had a good run," Vivian said. "We did. 35 years. 35 years. And every customer was a guest in our home." Walter looked at the dark window. He could see their reflection in it. 2 people, older than they imagined they would be, poorer than they planned to be, standing in front of the thing they had built and watching it disappear. "Every single one," he said. A man named Gerald Harrison bought the name and the locations. He reopened them as Harrison's Family Market. He kept the locations. He kept some of the staff. He did not keep the philosophy. Walter walked away with nothing. Not because the business failed catastrophically, because it bled out slowly, the way small businesses do when they're competing against giants. And by the time the last store closed, the debts exceeded the assets, and the retirement fund had been used to make payroll, and the house had been mortgaged twice, and there was nothing left. Nothing except Vivian. And Vivian was everything. They downsized. They moved. From the house with the yard and the garden to a small apartment above a hardware store on the east side of town. Walter took a job as a maintenance worker at the community college. Vivian worked part-time at the public library. They lived small. They lived carefully. They lived the way people live when they have lost everything except each other and when each other turns out to be enough. Walter never set foot in a Harrison's Family Market. Not once. In 25 years, he couldn't. Walking into a store that bore a different name but occupied the same space, that sold groceries from the same shelves he had stocked, that served customers he had once known by name, was a particular kind of pain that he could not endure until Vivian died. After Vivian died, the apartment became unbearable. Every room contained her. Every surface held her fingerprints. The silence was not empty. It was full of everything she had been and everything she would never be again. The same silence that fills every home when the person who made it a home is gone. Walter needed a routine, a reason to leave the apartment, a destination, a weekly event that gave the days a shape and the weeks a rhythm, and the life a structure that prevented it from collapsing into formlessness. He chose Tuesday. He chose Harrison's Family Market, the one on Lakewood Drive, not the original on Main Street, because the original had been demolished in 2008 and turned into a parking lot, which was the kind of thing that happens to buildings that were once important and that cities decide are more useful as flat paved surfaces for storing cars. He walked in for the first time on a Tuesday in April 3 years ago. He walked through the automatic doors and he smelled the produce and the bakery and the disinfectant and the particular indefinable smell of a grocery store, which is the same in every grocery store in America, regardless of the name on the sign. And he felt something he hadn't felt since the last store closed in 1997. He felt home, not the building. The idea, the concept of a place where food is sold and bought and carried home and turned into meals that are shared with people you love. The concept that he had built his entire career around and that he had lost, and that was still, despite everything, alive in the fluorescent aisles and the stacked shelves and the sound of a scanner beeping and a cashier saying, "Have a nice day." He started coming every Tuesday, same time, same items, bread, milk, soup, butterscotch candies. He paid with coins because coins were what he had. Social Security, $847 a month. Rent was $400. Utilities were $120. Medication was $210. What was left was $117. For food, for everything else. For the butterscotch candies that his grandchildren, Michael's children, expected to find in the bowl on the coffee table when they visited on Saturdays. $117 a month, collected in coins because Walter didn't have a bank account anymore. He had closed it when the fees exceeded the balance. He cashed his Social Security check at the check cashing place on Division Street, which charged him 3% for the privilege, and he took the cash and he spent it carefully, $1 at a time, and the coins accumulated in the Crown Royal bag that had been Vivian's, that she had kept her loose change in, that still smelled faintly of her perfume if you pressed it against your face, which Walter did sometimes late at night when the silence in the apartment was too loud and the only comfort was the smell of a woman who had loved him for 53 years. Derek Torres stood in the break room and looked at the photograph on the wall and felt something shift inside him. Not a small shift, the tectonic kind, the kind that rearranges everything, the kind that takes a moment you thought you understood and reveals it to be something entirely different. The old man at Register 7 was not just a customer paying with coins. He was the founder, the original owner, the man who had built the store that Derek had worked in for 11 years, the man whose name had been on the sign before Harrison's name replaced it, the man who had created the jobs that paid Derek's salary and funded his mother's medical care and kept his life from falling apart when everything else was falling apart. And he had been laughed at in his own store. Derek went back to the floor. The line at Register 7 had dispersed. Brittany was scanning groceries for another customer with the mechanical, shell-shocked efficiency of a person operating on autopilot while her brain processes something difficult. Karen had left. The teenager had left. The moment had passed, but Derek wasn't done. He called the store manager, a woman named Patricia Yoon, who was at the corporate office for a meeting. He told her what had happened. He told her about the coins, the laugh, the sigh, the recording. And then he told her about the photograph, about the founding member tag, about Walter Eugene Prescott, original owner of Prescott's Market, paying for bread and butterscotch candies with coins from a Crown Royal bag, while a 19-year-old cashier laughed at him. Patricia was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I'm coming back to the store. Don't let him leave. He already left. Then find him. I don't care how. Find him and bring him back. Derek knew where Walter lived, not because he had looked it up, because he had delivered groceries there once, 2 years ago, during a snowstorm, when the store offered delivery for elderly customers, and Walter's address had been on the list. The apartment above the hardware store on the east side, second floor. The door with the wreath that Vivian had hung, and that Walter had never taken down. He drove there after his shift. He parked at the curb. He climbed the stairs. He knocked on the door. Walter opened it. He was still wearing the gray coat. He was holding a butterscotch candy in his trembling hand, unwrapping it with the slow, deliberate concentration that the task required. Behind him, the apartment was small and clean and filled with photographs and the particular heavy quiet of a place where one person lives and two people used to. Mr. Prescott, my name is Derek Torres. I'm the assistant manager at Harrison's. I helped you at the register today. Walter nodded. I remember. Thank you for that. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Can I come in? Walter stepped aside. Derek entered the apartment. He saw the photographs. Vivian, the children, the grandchildren, and the ones that made his throat tighten. The store, the original Prescott's Market. Walter standing in front of it in his apron. Walter and Vivian behind the counter. Walter stocking shelves. Walter shaking hands with a customer. Walter at the register, making change, smiling, looking at the camera, with the expression of a man who loves what he does and who can't imagine doing anything else. Mr. Prescott, I need to tell you something. I know who you are. Walter looked at him. I'm an old man who pays with coins. You're the man who built the store I work in. You're the founder of Prescott's Market. I saw your photograph on the wall. Walter was quiet. He looked at the butterscotch candy in his hand. He looked at the photographs on the wall. He looked at the man standing in his apartment, the assistant manager of a store that used to be his, that used to bear his name, that used to be the thing he was most proud of in the world. That was a long time ago, Walter said. It doesn't matter how long ago it was. What matters is that today, in the store you built, a cashier laughed at you for paying with coins, and a customer sighed at you for being slow, and a teenager recorded you like you were a sideshow. In your store, Mr. Prescott. The store you built from nothing. The store where you knew every customer's name. The store where you kept butterscotch candies on the counter because you believed that every child who walked in should leave with something sweet. Walter's eyes widened. You know about the candies? I read about it in the company history file. You started the tradition in 1965. Free candy for every child. It was in your original business plan. Walter sat down in his chair, the recliner by the window. Vivian's chair was next to it, empty, a blanket draped over the back. Vivian said it was bad business. Walter said, giving away candy. She said we couldn't afford it. And I told her that we couldn't afford not to, because a child who gets a butterscotch candy at the grocery store remembers that store for the rest of their life. And when that child grows up and has children of their own, they come back, because the memory of sweetness brings people back. He paused. I was right. We had families who shopped with us for 3 generations. Grandparents, parents, grandchildren, all because of a butterscotch candy. Derek sat on the couch across from him. Mr. Prescott, our store manager wants to meet you. She wants to apologize for what happened today, and she wants to talk to you about something. About what? About making things right. Patricia Yoon met Walter at the store the next morning. She was 41 years old, Korean American, a Harvard MBA who had spent 15 years in corporate retail, and who ran the Harrison's Lakewood location with the precision of a military operation and the warmth of a church potluck. She was the rare combination of corporate competence and genuine humanity. And when she shook Walter's hand in the lobby of the store he had built 62 years ago, her eyes were wet, and her grip was firm, and her voice carried the weight of a woman who understands that businesses are not buildings or balance sheets. They are people. Mr. Prescott, she said, I'm so sorry for what happened to you yesterday. It was unacceptable. It was wrong, and it will never happen again. Walter shook his head. You don't need to apologize. The girl was young. She didn't know. That's exactly the problem. She didn't know. She didn't know who you were. She didn't know what this store used to be. She didn't know the philosophy you built it on. And that's our failure. Not hers. Ours. Patricia walked Walter through the store. She showed him the changes, the self-checkout lanes, the organic section, the prepared foods counter, the things that had been added in the decades since the name changed. But she also showed him the things that were still there, the layout he had designed, the the produce section in the front, because Walter had believed that the first thing a customer should see is fresh food. The bakery in the back, because the smell of baking bread draws people deeper into the store. The wide aisles, because Walter had insisted on wide aisles so that elderly customers with walkers and mothers with strollers could navigate them comfortably. She showed him the back room, where the old employee break area still had a corkboard that Walter had installed in 1968. The corkboard was covered with memos and schedules and the accumulated paperwork of 6 decades. And underneath it all, barely visible, was a yellowed index card with Walter's handwriting on it. Patricia carefully removed the layers of paper and revealed the card. It said, "Every customer is a guest in our home. Treat them accordingly. WP." Walter stared at the card, 56 years old, written in his own hand. He reached out and touched it with his trembling fingers, the way you touch something sacred, something that has survived when everything around it has changed. "I wrote that on the first day we opened," he said. "I made every employee read it before they started their shift." Vivian laminated it, but the lamination came off after a few years, and nobody replaced it. "I figured someone would throw it away eventually." "Nobody did," Patricia said. 56 years and nobody threw it away. Maybe nobody noticed it, or maybe everybody noticed it and nobody wanted to be the person who took it down. "Your DNA is still in this store," Patricia said. "Even the people who don't know your name are walking through a space you designed." Walter touched the produce display. He ran his trembling fingers along the edge of the table, feeling the wood beneath the new veneer, and his eyes got that faraway look that old people get when the present and the past occupy the same space. "I built this table," he said, "in 1972. Vivian and I. We couldn't afford the commercial displays, so we built them ourselves. Pine. Stained dark." She did the staining. She was better with the small work. Patricia looked at the table. Under the modern signage and the display bins, the bones of the original table were still there. Pine. Stained dark. 62 years old and still standing, like the man who built it. "Mr. Prescott, I have a proposal." "I'm listening." "I want to hire you as a consultant, part-time, 2 days a week. I want you to come to the store and help us remember what we've forgotten. The names, the families, the butterscotch candies, the philosophy that built this place. I want you to teach my staff what a grocery store is supposed to be." Walter looked at her. "I'm 79 years old. My hands shake. I can't stock shelves or run a register." "I don't need you to stock shelves or run a register. I have machines that do that now. What I don't have is a machine that can look a customer in the eye and make them feel like they matter. What I don't have is a machine that can remember someone's name and ask about their family and put aside their favorite cookies every Tuesday. What I don't have is a machine that understands that a grocery store is not a warehouse with cash registers. It's a community center with food." She paused. "I have plenty of machines, Mr. Prescott. What I need is a human being. And from what I can tell, you're the most human being this store has ever had. I don't want you to stock shelves. I want you to stand in the store and be the man who built it. I want my employees to see you, to talk to you, to understand that this building exists because a man and his wife believed that every customer deserves to be treated like a neighbor and every child deserves a butterscotch candy." Walter was quiet for a long time. He looked at the store, at the aisles he had designed, at the produce table he had built, at the space that had been his life's work and that had been taken from him by market forces and corporate acquisitions and the relentless impersonal machinery of an economy that values efficiency over everything. "When do I start?" he said. He started the following Tuesday, his day, the day he had been coming for 3 years with his Crown Royal bag and his coins. But now he came without the coins, because Patricia had told him, firmly and without negotiation, that Walter Prescott did not pay for groceries at the store he built. Ever. The bread and the milk and the soup and the butterscotch candies were on the house. For life, Walter argued. Of course he argued. He was a man who had worked for everything he had ever received and who considered a handout to be an insult and a free meal to be a debt. But Patricia was immovable. She said, "Mr. Prescott, this store made $11.6 million in revenue last year. It was built on a foundation that you laid. The least we can do is feed the man who laid it." Walter had no response to that, so he accepted, reluctantly, with the specific grudging grace of a proud man who has been out-argued by a younger woman and who respects her for it. His first morning was a Tuesday in April. He arrived at 7, an hour before the store opened, because he wanted to walk the aisles alone first. He wanted to feel the store without the noise and the people and the fluorescent urgency of a retail environment. He wanted to remember. He walked every aisle. He touched the shelves. He ran his hands along the refrigerator cases. He stood in the bakery section and breathed in the smell of bread baking, the same smell that had been the heartbeat of every Prescott's market, the smell that he had designed the layout around, the smell that said, "You are welcome here. This is a place of nourishment. This is a place that feeds." He stood by the produce section, his section, the front of the store. The first thing you see. He looked at the apples and the oranges and the bananas and the lettuce, and he saw beneath the modern packaging and the digital price tags the same products he had stocked 62 years ago when the store was new and he was young and the future was a road with no traffic. At 8 o'clock, the doors opened. The first customers came in. The morning regulars, the retirees, and the stay-at-home parents and the night shift workers buying breakfast before going to bed. Walter wore his good shirt, the blue one. He polished his shoes. He stood near the entrance by the produce section, and he greeted customers the way he used to greet them in 1962, by name, when he knew it, with a smile and a handshake when he didn't. "Good morning. Welcome to the store. Can I help you find anything?" The customers were confused at first. A 79-year-old man in a collared shirt standing by the bananas, greeting people as if he were the host of a party. It didn't compute. This was a grocery store, not a restaurant. People came to buy things, not to be welcomed. They were accustomed to the modern grocery experience, which is efficient and impersonal and designed to move people through as quickly as possible, the way a factory moves products through an assembly line. But Walter persisted. He greeted every customer who walked through the door. He asked how they were. He complimented a woman's scarf. He asked a man about his dog. He noticed a child's dinosaur shirt and said, "Is that a T-Rex? T-Rexes are my favorite." The child looked at his mother with wide eyes and said, "Mom, that man knows about dinosaurs. That man knows about a lot of things," the mother said. And she smiled, and slowly, imperceptibly, the atmosphere changed. People slowed down. They stopped rushing through the aisles with their heads down and their earbuds in. They looked up. They made eye contact. They said good morning back. They asked Walter how he was doing. They told him about their day. They lingered by the produce section not because they needed produce, but because the man standing there made them feel seen. The store got warmer, not the temperature, the feeling. The intangible, immeasurable quality that separates a place where people buy things from a place where people belong. The quality that Walter had built into the original Prescott's market and that had been stripped out, layer by layer, by the corporate machinery that replaced him. He brought back the butterscotch candies, a bowl of them on a small table by the entrance, free for every child. He paid for them himself. From the Social Security check that was no longer being spent on groceries. It was the first expenditure he made with joy since Vivian died. The children loved it. They came in with their parents and made a beeline for the bowl, the way children make beelines for anything that is sweet and free and placed at their eye level. They unwrapped the candies and ate them and smiled and said thank you. And Walter bent down carefully with knees that protested, and he said, "You're welcome, sweetheart. Come back anytime." The teenager who had recorded Walter at Register 7 came back to the store 2 weeks later. His name was Jordan. He was 17. He came not to shop, but to find Walter. He found him by the produce section, greeting customers, and he stood in the aisle for 5 minutes, working up the courage to approach. "Sir, I'm the one who... I recorded you at the register a couple weeks ago." Walter looked at him. "I remember. I deleted it, the video. I deleted it that same day, after the manager said what he said. I felt like garbage." Walter studied the boy, 17. All potential, all uncertainty, all the beautiful, terrifying possibility of a life that hasn't happened yet. "Did you learn something?" Walter asked. "Yes, sir." "Then it was worth it. The whole embarrassing, coin-spilling, getting laughed at mess of it was worth it, because you learned something. And learning things is the only thing that matters when you're 17. Jordan looked at the ground. Then he looked at Walter. "Can I come work here? Like, after school?" Walter smiled. The first full, unguarded, genuinely warm smile he had smiled in 3 years. The smile of a man who has been invisible, and who has been seen, and who has been laughed at, and who has been respected, and who has, despite everything, not given up on the idea that people are fundamentally good when they are given a reason to be. Talk to Patricia, Walter said. Tell her I sent you. Jordan was hired the following week. He worked the produce section. Walter trained him personally. He taught him how to stack apples so they don't bruise, how to trim lettuce so it stays fresh, how to talk to customers, which was the most important lesson and the one that had nothing to do with produce. Look them in the eye, Walter said. Say their name if you know it. Ask them how they're doing, and mean it. Don't just say the words, mean them. Because people can tell the difference between words and meaning is the only thing that keeps them coming back. Brittany still works at the store. Derek talked to her the day of the incident. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He told her about Walter, about the store, about the photograph on the wall. He told her the story the way you tell a story to someone who needs to hear it, not as punishment, but as education. Brittany cried. She asked to apologize to Walter personally. She found him by the produce section the following Tuesday, and she stood in front of him and said, Mr. Prescott, I'm sorry, I laughed and I shouldn't have. I didn't know. Walter took her hand, his trembling hand holding her steady one. You know now. That's what matters. Brittany is 20 now. She's still at Harrison's. She's studying business at the community college. She wants to manage a store someday. She says she wants to manage it the way Walter managed his, with names, with neighbors, with butterscotch candies on the counter. She keeps a photograph of Walter taped to the inside of her register. She looks at it every time someone pays with coins. Walter Eugene Prescott worked at Harrison's Family Market for 2 more years. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he greeted customers. He stocked the butterscotch candy bowl. He told stories about the old days to anyone who would listen, and everyone listened because the old days were better in the ways that matter, and the man telling the stories was the proof. He died on a Tuesday morning in May. He was 81 years old. He had gotten dressed for work, blue shirt, polished shoes. He was sitting in his chair at home, the recliner by the window, with a butterscotch candy in his pocket and his coat over his arm, ready to go. He died ready to go to work, ready to stand by the produce section and greet people and hand out candy and be the man who built the store. He died the way he had lived, dressed, prepared, showing up. The funeral was held at the Lutheran Church on Oak Street. 300 people came, customers, employees, former employees from the original Prescott's Market who hadn't seen Walter in decades but who had never forgotten him. Jordan came, Brittany came, Derek came, Patricia came, Karen Whitfield came, the woman who had sighed in the checkout line, and she sat in the back row and cried the entire service and told no one why. Derek gave the eulogy. He stood at the podium and he told the story, the coins, the laugh, the photograph on the wall, the man who built the store and lost the store and came back to the store as a customer paying with coins from a purple velvet bag. Walter Prescott taught me something, Derek said. He taught me that every person who walks through a door deserves to be seen. Not scanned, not processed, not rushed through a line. Seen, known, respected. He built an entire business on that idea. And when the business was gone and the name was changed and the world had moved on, he kept living by it every Tuesday in a collared shirt, with polished shoes, with coins in a bag and dignity in his spine. He paused. The next time someone pays with coins at your register, remember, Walter, count the coins, bag the groceries, say their name, because you don't know who they are. You don't know what they built. You don't know what they lost. All you know is that they showed up, and showing up deserves respect. Harrison's Family Market renamed the Lakewood location. It is now called Harrison Prescott Family Market. The sign went up on a Saturday morning in June. Patricia organized a ceremony. The mayor came. The local news covered it. Walter's grandchildren cut the ribbon. Inside the store by the entrance, next to the produce section that Walter designed, there is a small table. On the table is a bowl of butterscotch candies, individually wrapped in gold cellophane, free for every child. Above the bowl is a photograph, black and white. A young man standing in front of a grocery store with a hand-painted sign. He is wearing an apron and a smile that says everything about who he was and what he believed. Beneath the photograph is a plaque. It says, "In memory of Walter Eugene Prescott, founder, 1962. Treat every customer like a neighbor. Give every child something sweet." And every Tuesday, at the same time Walter used to come, Derek Torres walks to the entrance and stands by the produce section and greets the first customer who walks through the door. "Good morning. Welcome to the store. Can I help you find anything?" Because that's what Walter would have done. And some things, once built, should never be torn down.